everything in between. But it's not just that. The fact of the matter is that until very recently, the study of the biologically female body has lagged far behind the study of the male body. It's not simply that physicians and scientists don't bother to seek out sex-specific data, it's that until all too recently, the data didn't exist. From 1996 to 2006, more than 79% of the animal studies published in the scientific journal Pain included only male subjects. Before the 1990s, the stats were more disproportionate, and this is hardly unusual. Dozens of prominent scientific journals report the same. The reason for this blind spot concerning female bodies, whether we're talking about basic biology or the nuances of medicine, isn't just sexism. It's an intellectual problem that became a societal problem. For a long time, we've been thinking about what sexed bodies are and how we should go about studying them in entirely the wrong way. In the biological sciences, there's still such a thing as the male norm. In the scientific literature, this is also called male bias. The male body, from mouse to human, is what gets studied in the lab, unless we're specifically researching ovaries, uteri, estrogens, or breasts. The girls aren't there. Think about the last time you heard about a scientific study. Some article about a new window into obesity, or pain tolerance, or memory, or aging. More than likely, that study didn't include any female subjects. That's as true for mice as it is for dogs, pigs, monkeys, and, all too often, humans. By the time a clinical trial for a new medication starts testing on human subjects, it might not have been tested on female animals at all. So when we think about Elizabeth Shaw screaming her sci-fi head off at the misogynistic MedPod, we shouldn't just feel terror and pity and disbelief. We should feel recognition. Why is this still happening? Aren't the sciences supposed to be objective, gender neutral, bound by the empirical method? When I first found out about the male norm, I was flabbergasted. Not because I'm a woman, but because at the time, I was a PhD candidate at Columbia University studying the evolution of narrative and cognition. Brains and stories, to put it simply, and their 300,000-year history. I taught and conducted research at a number of the top-tier institutes of learning and science in the modern world. As such, I thought I had a pretty good overview of the state of women in the academy. While I'd seen some sketchy stuff, I'd personally never experienced sexism in the lab. The idea that much of biological sciences still rested on the male norm was the furthest thing from my mind. Though I am a feminist, mine was more a feminism in practice. Simply being a woman doing quantitative research was, to me, the revolutionary act. And honestly, the biologists and neuroscientists and psychologists and biophysicists I knew, from the people I collaborated with to the people I drank with, were some of the most cosmopolitan, liberal, clear-headed, intelligent, and frankly good people I'd ever met. If I'd been one to gamble, I'd never have thought of them as the sort who'd perpetuate some systemic injustice, much less one that undermines their science. But it's not entirely their fault. Many researchers default to male subjects for practical reasons. It's difficult to control for the effects of female fertility cycles, particularly in mammals. A complex soup of hormones floods their bodies at regular intervals, whereas male sex hormones seem more stable. A good scientific experiment aims to be simple, designed with as few confounding factors as possible. As a postdoc in a Nobel laureate's lab once told me, using males just makes it easier to do clean science. The variables, in other words, are easier to control, thereby making the data more interpretable with less work, and the results more meaningful. This is especially true for the complex systems involved in behavioral research, but can even be a problem with basic things like metabolism. Taking the time to control for the female reproductive cycle is considered difficult and expensive. The ovary itself is thought of as a confounding factor. So unless a scientist is specifically asking a question about females, the female sex is left out of the equation. The experiments run faster, the papers come out sooner, and the researcher is more likely to get grant funding and tenure. But making such decisions to simplify is also prompted by, and perpetuates, a much older understanding of what sexed bodies are. It's not that top-flight scientists still think female bodies were made when God pulled a rib from Adam's side, but the assumption that being sexed is simply a matter of sex organs. that somehow